Tick-tock, time to rock. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's watching from all over the world. Yes, I'm alone. Just me, just me. Didn't invite anybody else. This was just what is this, David? Guys are evil, man. David is just now remembering he scheduled a live stream. Notice, guys. When I have other people on with me, I'm 10, 12, even 15 minutes late sometimes. And yet here I am by myself, right on time. Coincidence? Coincidence? Hey, so anyway, yeah, someone sent me. This was actually I don't know, a week or two ago. But then I just saw I'd made a note about it. Someone said a Christian YouTuber had posted a response to my Ramadan in Times Square video, where let's see, me, Hatoon, Anthony Rogers, Drake went there, and there were other people who were there, but like the four of us went there, but there were other people there as well. Anyway, I was kind of walking beside the Ramadan prayer extravaganza there, and I brought up some passages from Jesus and recorded a video there. It was funny. Some people, you can see the comments on the video. Some people thought I would just took someone else's video and was doing voiceover on it and so on. Nope, I was there. I was standing right there. And you can see in their video, they started, the leader of the whole thing, he started calling me out and stuff. Anyway, we've been through some of that. But someone said, I haven't seen the video. We're going to watch the video. I haven't seen the video. But someone said a Christian named, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. I've never, Jayni, something like that. We'll see. But, wait, what is this? Warner was the funniest? Hang on. Warner was the funniest. Yeah, Warner's always the funniest at everything. What is this? You have been humiliated. So, what is this? David needs post-it notes. Yeah, I do. I actually do. It's funny. David Wood thinks 2 minutes late is right on time. Well, most people post like 2-minute music intros. So I don't. So if I just leave out the 2-minute music intro, then that would be right on time, right? Would that be? What the heck is this, man? Hold up. And not a moment's peace in my entire life without this guy. Hey, man, what's up, man? Your hair's looking kind of cool.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I heard that you were streaming alone today, so I said maybe I'll just come in and pop in for a bit.
Yeah, that's always a good idea. When someone just like, hey, you know what? I really want to be alone. Just charge right in, man. Charge right in. That's what you do. That's what you do. Hey, how you doing, Issa? Well, Issa,
I'm wonderful. Thank you.
You're gonna be on the wrong side of this one, Issa, because we're about to. Well, no, you might agree. You might agree with the guy. Anyway, I heard this guy called me out. He called me out for my video somehow or something like that. No, I don't know him. He might be super nice. He might even be right. We're about to see. We're gonna see it. But anyway, someone sent me a video saying he had responded to my Times Square video, and so anyway, I usually think about these things. If I'm going to watch it, then if there's no other live, if there's not already a live stream and I'm going to watch it, I might as well just click live and then watch it, and then everyone can watch it, and then everyone can see whether this guy's right and D Wood is completely wrong for once, or they'll see that this guy's completely wrong and has no clue what he's talking about, or that David Wood is partially right and this other guy's partially right, and so on. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and check it out. You got that, Issa? So no shenanigans. None of your no Sufi magic and spells and stuff during this during this live stream. Hey, let's see here. Someone said it wasn't too long ago we saw a group of Muslims gathered in Times Square to, of course, pray. Oh, hey, that's good. That's good. That means some of you have seen this, right? Hey, how many of you saw? I still don't know how to pronounce his name, because that could be Jayni, I don't know. How many of you saw that? Because he apparently has a funny line. It wasn't too long ago we saw a group of Muslims gathered in Times Square to, of course, pray. Hey, that's actually a funny line. I might like this guy. That's the other reason I like watching some of these videos, because if it's a newer kind of a newer YouTuber or something like that, or someone I'm not familiar with, then happy to help get some exposure. So some people might watch it and go, hey, I like this guy, and then want to check out his channel and stuff. Or some people might be like, oh no, I can't stand this dude, I will never watch him again, and boycott him. So it's good to know. Good to know. And only watching this because Issa joined. Nice, nice, nice.
Very sweet.
So guys, yeah, won't be going too late tonight. The video's, I think, 20 some minutes long. I think it's 20 some minutes long. So we're gonna check this out, and if this guy has to be completely destroyed and humiliated, by golly, that's what we'll do. Or if he's right, then maybe I need to be completely destroyed and humiliated. We'll see. All right, ready, Issa? What are you doing, man?
I am just in the car. I was going to a show tonight, so I saw you were streaming, so I said, let me pop in before I go to the show.
You want to share what show?
It's a comedy show. It's called The Punchline in Philadelphia.
Oh, so actual like stand-up comics?
It's stand-up comedy.
You ever thought about jumping up on there?
I was thinking about it.
Because, dude, you know what's funny? Like someone with kind of a unique background, I'm telling you, you jump up there and say, hey, I'm a Sufi Muslim and Jewish. That's kind of a good, like lots of jokes could emerge from that sort of situation, man.
I actually have a very famous friend who, it's like a childhood brother. He does stand up. His name's Ahmed Weinberg. So he does a lot. He has Comedy Central. Has this thing called Ramadan Diaries. So yeah, he did that shtick. He's like, I'm fasting and the refrigerator is there and I'm hungry and I want to have a relationship with the refrigerator. It's wild. So
interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. All right, so we're going to go ahead and jump into this video, guys, and we're going to see. I did, when I was getting it ready, I did scroll. It looks, I don't know if he played all of my video or most of it, but I don't think I need to play my video because he either watches a lot of it or most of it. But we're going to go ahead and check this out.
Do you want to ask you a quick question?
You just did.
Oh, I like another one. Do you think Bassem Youssef is funny?
I do.
That's actually what this show is. So I was like, I want to see what his humor is. So because he's coming here, so I said, let me go see Bassem Youssef.
You're going to see Bassem Youssef. Now, keep in mind, he says some messed up, evil stuff. But I'll give credit where it's due. I think the guy's funny. Even if I disagree with something. It's like I'm sure you've seen this before. You'll have some movie coming out, and then everyone flips out about it. People will flip out about the movie because it's pushing because it's woke or something like that. And I'm always thinking like, okay, my main criterion is, did you make a good movie? It could be a message I completely disagree with, but I could say that is a great movie, and I completely disagree with the message, but very well done movie. Or I can say, hey, there's a movie I completely agree with the message, but what a crap movie. Yeah, I've seen lots of people like they don't agree with the message. They say it's a terrible movie. It's like, I don't know, it's a pretty darn good movie there. So I don't know, maybe just. So anyway, it's like with Bassem Youssef. I think he's I don't know. I think he's he even when he's saying something. Gosh, I don't want to. Now everyone's like, oh, I'm going to go start watching Bassem Youssef. I can acknowledge a dude is seriously funny. Which I think he is. But I've seen other people, he's not funny at all. He's not funny. He's terrible. It's like, I don't know, man. Seems kind of funny when I saw him. You heard it here, folks. Issa going to come back all radicalized from Bassem Youssef. And wait, what is this? Docs. Please tell Issa not to dox himself. Worried about his safety given he joins your streams. Oh, you think someone's going to go to the Bassem Youssef show and Jihad Issa here because he hangs out on my show and calms me down half the time?
Highly doubt it. But I think we thank you. Thank you for your sentiment.
All right, let's go ahead and check out Jayni. See, it looks like Jayni. Does anyone know how to pronounce this name? It looks like Jayni, but I would normally be familiar with spelled completely differently. Jayni being a girl's name, you know. So Jayni got a gun. Jayni got a gun. Let's go ahead and check this out. I'm just seeing if anyone knows how to pronounce that name. Come on, guys. You're here for one reason. That's to tell me how to pronounce names. I'll check back in a second. No, matter of fact, maybe he's going to say it. Let's see.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Least of These podcasts. My name is Jayni Jackson, and today I want to talk.
Did he say Janai? He said it too fast.
It sounded almost like Shania.
It sounded too fast.
Maybe it's Shania.
Back to the Least of These podcasts. My name is Jayni Jackson, and today
I think he said Janai. Janai. Okay, yeah. Some people are saying Janai. Okay, Janai. All right, Janai. All right.
I want to talk about something that's recently caught my attention. You see, it wasn't too long ago that we saw a group of Muslims gathered in Times Square to, of course, pray. And I believe it was in commemoration of Ramadan, if I'm not mistaken. And you know, that in and of itself is not really what I found particularly interesting. Rather, what I actually found most interesting was what David Wood did whenever he got there.
Ha! I am the most interesting thing about that. All right.
And I want to show you this video so that you can see exactly what I'm talking about, because I do not want to misrepresent anything that's happening in this clip, right? I want you to see what exactly happens for yourself. And so here's the clip.
Look
at this. These are people who claim to respect Jesus. Hey, you might want to look away from this, Issa, because I'm talking about your Times Square Ramadan prayers, man.
Do you know what's actually funny? I actually saw this clip, and I was like, you're not wrong. According to the Quran, you're right. There's a chapter in the Quran called Surah Al-Ma'un, and it says exactly what you say in the Quran, too. It says, do not make prayer for show. It says that literally. It literally says that in the Quran, you know, so.
And
Muhammad
in the Hadith said, "Do not pray in the what's the word? It's not popular. Common or something like this. Road or something like that." And I'm not sure whether the idea. I'd have to look at like commentaries on it or something. But I'm not sure whether the idea was that you would be blocking. You don't want to block the road, or if it was just, hey, if you're in a like a common road, then there's going to be distractions around. There's going to be noise around or something like that. So I don't know what the background, I don't know what he was actually trying to say. But either way, you see Muslims doing both. I mean, what place on the planet, other than if like bombs were going off around you, like what more distracting place could you possibly be on the planet other than Times Square? I mean, it's the most distracting place in the world. Just look at the signs, like all around, and then people all around, and people making noises and stuff. So, if Muhammad was saying, you know, you don't want to be in a place that's going to have tons of distractions around, well, this should not be going on. Or if he's saying you don't want to block roads, I can't say they're blocking a road here. You can still get around. But we do see lots of Muslims for these things blocking roads and stuff. So. But I talk about what Jesus said.
But it's funny that it's aligned. I was just going to say, I think it's really funny that it's aligned. Even the Quran says it. That's what I think it's really kind of hilarious.
See Issa saying, you see, it's all one. It's all the same message.
Well, this particular thing is aligned. And I think that's really funny that you can quote the Quran too. It's like you quoted the Quran when we were debating Junior. You're like, well, the Quran says this. You're refuting this, but the Quran says it. So you're going to go against what the Quran says.
To honor Jesus. They claim to follow Jesus. but they pay absolutely no attention to anything he said. What would Jesus say about Muslims gathering in Times Square to get maximum attention for their prayers while they pretend to fast during Ramadan? We don't have to wonder. All we have to do is read. In Matthew 6. By the way, look at this. It just went away. But I mean, look. I mean, there's this chick and her luscious lips up on the screen, and I don't know. I don't remember what's like in the video as far as the background, but you saw screens all around here, like just like butts and lips up in your face the entire time. Like, oh, look at my butt in these jeans and stuff. And it's just like all around. Anyway, let's see. In Matthew 6, Jesus condemns religious practices that are meant to impress other people, acts of righteousness that are just for show. The chapter begins. Beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them, for then you will have no reward from your Father who is in heaven. Good point. If your goal when you pray or fast or give to charity is to be seen by others, then being seen by others is your reward. Good point. And what I think is interesting about this is whenever you point out to a Muslim, hey, you claim to follow Jesus, but you're contradicting what Jesus said right here. Pretty standard to say, well, that's been corrupted. And then, of course, you go Islamic dilemma. But on this particular issue, so guys, this is basically you have the Sermon on the Mount. So this is part of the Sermon on the Mount. It's the Sermon on the Mount is in the book of Matthew, chapters 5 through 7. It's one long sermon by Jesus, and this is chapter 6 is about hypocrisy, doing things just to be seen by others. Praying to be seen by others, fasting to be seen by others, giving to charity to be seen by others. Keep in mind, if I wanted to give, like, if I had some money, I wanted to give to charity, I could do that completely anonymously. And Jesus said, don't let your left hand know what your right hand's doing, right? That's how you're supposed to, like, keep it secret. But, like, so Jesus is talking about don't do your acts of righteousness in order to earn yourself a reputation for being this awesome, righteous, pious person. If you do, well, guess what? That's your reward. If you're doing these things not because they're right or not because God wants you to do them, if you're doing them so that you get a reputation as being an awesome person, well, then when you do them and then you get a reputation for being an awesome person, that's your reward right there. That's what you got out of it, because that's why you were doing it. But anyway, Suppose you bring this up and someone says, well, that part's been corrupted. Jesus never said that. It's like, really? Like, do you think Jesus really thought it was a good idea to be doing these things, to be seen by others, and that someone came along later and is like, hey, I don't like the fact that Jesus was saying, do all this stuff in the middle of the streets and make sure you're always pointing at yourself saying, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me. That's what Jesus is really saying, but I'm going to change it so that he's actually calling out hypocrisy and he's telling you not to do this stuff to be seen by others. Like, you think that's more likely? It seems way more likely, especially given how much people got upset. I mean, one of the main things that upset people about Jesus was he was constantly exposing their hypocrisy. And so, I don't know, Muslims, even if you wanted to completely ignore the Islamic dilemma and stuff like that, and you wanted to say, okay, I believe a bunch of Jesus' teachings were changed and corrupted over time. It's like, seriously, on this? This seems like paradigmatically Jesus calling out hypocrisy and saying, don't do this stuff in order to be seen by others.
And it just shows that this is a made up thing. They've made this up because, like we said, in this particular situation, the Quran is an agreement where it says it says, so woe to those who pray, particularly hypocrites, it's referring to that, and are unmindful of their prayers. And they pray just to show off. That's literally what the Quran says. And it's like literally what you're seeing here. Like, you see people filming the camera, posting the camera, let me get the selfie in, and it's wild. So not only are they violating, the teachings of the big JC, they're also violating the Quran, which is wild. It's a wild situation. In this case, they're violating both of these spaces. So they're just making up their own thing because they want to look good, and I don't think they really look too good. Honestly, I think you're calling them out, and I think it's fair.
Yeah. And someone here said show month. And that's what's amazing, right? It's like, oh, here's the month where we're really going to focus on God and fasting. And it becomes like the biggest show of the entire year. It becomes an entire month of look at us, look at us, look at us, look at us, look at us. It's like, really, guys? Really, guys? What is this here? What is this here? You all can keep ignoring the truth that both Jews and Muslims hate us and Jesus. But whosoever denies me before men, I will also deny before my Father in heaven. What do you mean Jews and Muslims hate us and Jesus? You'd mean like, I grant you some Muslims and some Jews do. Yeah, I could grant that. And some Christians hate Jews and Muslims, even though we're commanded to love everyone, even our enemies. So what are you trying to say? What are you trying to say?
And the followers of Christ were all Jews. So are you saying
that's what I mean? That's why I'm saying some. It's like, okay, you have. Matter of fact, on Monday, I'm going to have a messianic Jew on live with me and stuff like that. So, yeah, just check yourself.
Reward from God. Verses 5-6. And when you pray, you must not be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and at the street corners.
And this part sucked when I was editing because I wanted the passage on the screen. But when I said on the street corners, I like film all around, I like point the camera around and stuff like that. But anyway, I thought it was more important to have the passage on the screen than to show my awesome videography.
That they may be seen by others. Truly I say to you, they have received their reward. But when you pray, go into your room and shut the door and pray to your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you. If you're praying to put on a show, if you're praying to be seen by others, like all of these people, then being seen by others is your reward, no reward from God. But Jesus isn't done. Verses 16-18. And when you fast, do not look gloomy like the hypocrites, for they disfigure their faces, that their fasting may be seen by others. Truly I say to you, they have received their reward. But when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face, that your fasting may not be seen by others, but by your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you. Jesus condemns prayer that's meant to be seen by others. He condemns fasting that's meant to be seen by others. If you're praying and fasting in order to gain a reputation for righteousness, Jesus says that your prayer and fasting are worthless before God. But it gets worse, because when Jesus condemns fasting that's meant to be seen by others, he's talking about people who are really fasting. He's talking about people who are really fasting, but they want everyone to notice. Imagine what Jesus would think of this public fasting if the people doing it aren't really fasting.
All right, so that's the video. Now,
That's not the end, but you all got the gist. You all got the gist. After that, that's where I call it trans fasting. I said it's feasting that identifies as fasting. So that was classic. But anyway, you guys get the. He played enough of it to understand. There's some conclusion on there, but everyone got the gist.
Everything was true. You didn't say anything false there. I don't know what would. I wonder what this gentleman's going to say, but I think you hit it on the note. I think I think it's what religion should be about, is that you're not a hypocrite and that you are sincere and that you're not, like the best kinds of people, they don't, like you think of like Keanu Reeves, for example, he gave like millions of dollars to the hospital. Nobody knew about it. That's what really giving is. It's not where you give and you show your name everywhere and stuff like that. And I think that's, what, Christ was saying, and that's what the holy teachers teach. So what you said is exactly in line with that. So I don't know what could be offensive about this.
We're going to find out. What did he say? What did we conclude his name was? Janai? Is that what we concluded it was? Okay, Janai. Let's take these 2 super chats real quick. Responding to someone, to quote the words of Jesus in John 4:22, you worship what you do not know, we worship what we know, for salvation is from the Jews. Then that's a super sticker. Thank you. The Malik of the Goofy Sufis. The Malik of the Goofy Sufis is here. Can you confirm that D Wood is your Dimeo-based one? Oh, hi, David.
So silly. Absolutely not. I think that system is ridiculous and evil. So
Hey,
it's an evil system.
We can finally agree with a Muslim on something. Awesome stuff. And there we have Issa. Oh, hey, David. Hey, Ida. What's up? And we've got Allah doesn't know what is in secret. Shaitan does. And then Ida. Nice try, Ida. I caught you out. As soon as I saw your name, I was like, Ida gonna try and trick me into reading a super sticker. All right. Nice. But that was a super sticker that said, keep it up. Oh, we're going to keep it up. All right, let's check out what Janai here has for us.
I already know that there are many of you who probably see nothing wrong with what David Wood did there. Many of you are probably feeling just as concerned about Islam's growing presence in America, or even just in the world more generally speaking. And you're probably thinking to yourselves, man, it's about time that someone finally stood up to them,
Good
right?
point.
That someone
Good points.
finally stood up to this growing problematic religion that is Islam. And I know some of you are really saying that to yourself, especially if you view America as a majority Christian nation and you would actually like it to keep it that way. And listen, I completely understand that feeling. All right, I'm not going to act like that reaction is somehow crazy or irrational.
Hey, Issa, we got some people here who still aren't familiar with you. You want to give the short version of what in the name of common sense you are?
What in the name of common sense I am? Wow, that's. I'm trying to figure out how to say that in a quick space. So I come from my background is I come from a Sufi and a Jewish background, and so I definitely come from like a perennialist perspective. Like all roads lead, to the vine. It's kind of where I'm at this moment in time. So I think that's a very simple way of putting it.
But we know the truth because he is a huge Bassem Youssef fan. And we all know what that means. All right, here we go.
Get where that instinct comes from. However, I do think this is one of those moments where I think we need to stop and really think about what we're actually saying here and what these Muslims are actually doing, because I have a sneaking suspicion that many of us right now are just reacting more than we are actually reasoning. And I don't just mean reasoning emotionally, right? Plenty of us are already doing a pretty fantastic job at that already. Rather, what I mean is reasoning biblically and logically and theologically. Now, I actually don't want to spend too much time on this in this video, but I do think that this is something that is incredibly lacking in today's culture, right? Which is just displaying the ability to just slow down and think carefully about these things. And I think this is actually one of those places where we actually have a chance to do that. And so let's take this moment to really think through this issue biblically and theologically for a moment, okay? Now, the first thing that I think we need to clarify is exactly how.
Hold on. I just saw a funny comment. So he talked about reasoning. He talked about reasoning emotionally. Someone said, yeah, if there's anything D Wood is known for, it's reasoning emotionally. Yeah. I am a walking ball of emotions, guys.
Ramadan fasting actually works. And you kind of heard this explained in the video by David Wood, but I actually think it's worth saying again, but this time much slowly and clearly. You see, during Ramadan, Muslims fast from dawn to sunset, where they eat, no food and have no drink, right? Then when the sun goes down, they break the fast at night. And yes, that often involves a large meal, right? Where families gather together and there's plenty of food, there's celebration. And then the next day from dawn to sunset, they fast again, right? The cycle continues. And so when David Wood points out that many Muslims eat large meals at night in preparation for the next day's fast, he's actually not uncovering some hidden hypocrisy that Islam is just somehow unaware of. Rather, he's just describing the system exactly as it's designed to function, right? That's not a glitch in Islam, in other words. That's not something Muslims are secretly embarrassed about that David Wood pointed out there. That's already baked into the structure of Ramadan itself, right? It would be like someone coming from another country and coming to America, walking into a buffet style restaurant and then criticizing Americans for getting multiple plates of food, right? They may look, at us Americans and think, well, why are you eating so much food, right? You only need enough food to get through, the next couple of hours. But what they don't understand is that in a buffet setting, the whole point is that you're allowed to eat freely within that structure, right? You're not violating some hidden rule. You're actually operating according to them. And that's exactly what's happening here. And so when David Wood, as a Christian, critiques Muslims for eating large meals at night during Ramadan in preparation for the next day's fast, all he's doing is pointing out something that's already obvious to many Muslims out there, right? It's not as though Muslims think that they're doing a 30-day water-only fast, right? They understand exactly what their fast entails. And so whatever critique that we want to make of Islam, and trust me, there are many serious theological critiques to make against Islam. This particular point isn't exposing hypocrisy. It's just describing their practice as they themselves define it.
I think he's off on a couple things so far. So he's saying that I wouldn't be exposing hypocrisy here because that's just their system. I guess the presupposition would be that someone's system can't be hypocritical. I mean, if that's the case, then Jesus shouldn't have been criticizing the scribes and Pharisees and calling them hypocrites. That was just their system. It was just their system, right? They had a system in place, and here's how they're operating according to their system. He didn't say that. He said they're hypocrites. They're hypocrites. So that's kind of one thing. But so there's that. And then there's, as Issa was pointing out, you can point to, and I didn't do this in the video, but there are things within Islam where that you could point to and say they shouldn't be doing this even according to Islam. In other words, these particular guys out in the middle of Times Square, that they're not even doing things right. And then you could say, and I've heard Muslims point this out, even though you have this issue that food sales skyrocket during Ramadan, that you end up with all these medical problems and so on arising because of the binge eating during Ramadan. There are Muslims who point out, okay, yeah, even though lots of Muslims are doing that, that's not the way it's supposed to be. You're not supposed to be stuffing yourself every day and so on. So you could point out that they're not even following Islam. But the thing that I'm focused on is, which I said in my video, there are people who claim to be following Jesus. They claim to respect Jesus. They'll point out, look, Jesus had a beard. We have beards. You see, Jesus was a Muslim. It's like, okay, Jesus said, don't do this stuff to be seen by others. It was like fundamental to Jesus' message. Do not do things for show. So are you following that? And if you're not, I think it's important to call you on that. I think it's important to call you out on that. Hey, you claim to be following Jesus. You're doing the exact opposite of what he said. And he says what you're doing right now scores you no points with God. Gets you nothing with God, what you're doing right now. So whatever you're doing, don't say you're doing it for God, because according to Jesus, this ain't for God. And I know there are tons of Muslims out there who watch this and they just get mad at me and stuff. Guess what? You say it, you say it hoping that some Muslims actually take the words of Jesus a bit more seriously and stop and say, you know what? What Jesus was saying makes sense. You know, this is kind of how we've been doing it. You know, this is what I've seen all my life. But you know what? It does make sense that you shouldn't be doing stuff to be seen by others. And guess what? There are Muslims out there who will look at that and go, you know what? That's Jesus' words make sense there. So anyway, the point is, I believe in, I believe in calling out hypocrisy where it is, whether it's among Christians, whether it's among Muslims, Jews, atheists, whoever.
I don't think you said anything wrong, and I think his commentary against it really didn't help. He was also not really correct. Muslims are supposed to fast before dawn. So there's like a light in the sky. You have to fast before that. So he wasn't correct, even like technically speaking on that. It's before dawn to sunset. But I think your point is correct. He didn't refute the point. He's like, well, you know, there's a buffet. And I'm like, no, the point of fasting, the idea, at least, you know, you'll hear this a lot. The idea of fasting is so you can feel like those who are disenfranchised and impoverished. And if you're sleeping all day and you're eating all night, what is the purpose of that? You're just doing it because you were told to do it. You're not doing it because you actually believe in doing that. And I think, you know, like for a lot of Christians, followers of Christ, the practice of fasting is a spiritually transformative practice. You're not just doing it because you're told to do it. You do it because you believe in it. You know, it's a choice for you to choose to do it. And I think that that's a really powerful thing. And I think people should look at spiritual practice as that, as it's something that you're choosing to do sincerely. You're not just doing it to game. How do I put it? Like, it's like video game logic. You're doing the stuff to get points. It's like, you know, you're playing Super Mario, right? And you go collect the coins. That's what it is. You're just collecting coins and getting points. But it's not actually sincere spiritual practice. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Here's Ida laughing at her attempt to trick me into reading a super sticker again. D Wood entertaining a goofy Sufi. And someone said, Jai said Issa's a Jufi.
I like Jai. He's a great guy.
Oh, Jai's awesome, man. And he says, based, he has a good heart. And also he's actually AP in disguise. Yep. Notice AP's not here and somehow Issa shows up.
That's what's in.
And you know, that matters because if we're going to engage Islam seriously, we at least need to critique them accurately. Now, I know someone might say, you know, but Janai, I think you're missing David Wood's whole point here.
Ha! Janai. There he said it clearly. So we were right. Janai. Janai. Right.
His point was that Muslims hold Jesus in such high regard, and yet they don't follow his teaching, especially in regards to what he said on the Sermon on the Mount about not fasting and praying.
Okay. Then he did understand my point. Okay. That's good.
In order to be seen like the pagans do. And look, I hear that. I get what David Wood is trying to get at there, but I still think we're missing the broader issue, in my opinion, because if you actually understand what Islam teaches, then you would understand that Muslims are not followers of Jesus. Otherwise, they would be called Christians. And I know that's where someone's probably going to respond, well, isn't that just the inconsistency within their worldview, right? You can't claim to honor Jesus and then not do what he says, right? That's the whole point of grappling with Jesus' words there.
Okay, this is Issa's shaking his head there, but I was concerned. I was concerned that he didn't actually understand my point, but he did actually state my point. So, okay, now we're going to find out why he disagrees with it.
And I agree with many of you with the instinct behind that statement, right? In Christian theology and really in Christian apologetics, we say this all the time. Either Jesus is who he claims to be or he isn't. There's no neutral middle ground where he's just a great moral teacher that you can safely admire from a safe distance.
Hey, hold up on here. Dr. Wood, spare him. Colton has no idea how you could embarrass him. Who's Colton? Was Colton someone in the chat? Who's Colton?
Maybe he's referring to Janai.
Is his name like Colton Janai? No, his name's Jayni Jackson. What are you
Maybe
saying,
he
man?
looks like
Hey,
maybe he looks
Joseph
like
Smith.
someone called that.
Hey, Joseph Smith, 007. Who's Colton? Oh, wait, no. Then someone said, I'm Colton, please spare me. What? All right, I'll figure that out later.
Right? I totally understand that. But here's the thing I still think many people are missing. Muslims do believe that there is a third option, right? They believe Jesus is a prophet. They speak respectfully about him. They'll deny that he's the son of God. Actually, they'll even deny that he's God at all.
Oh, wait, someone said, he said, no, Colton Miller, LDS, mocking you, Avery, and Michael Jones on Islam parody.
Oh,
Oh, Mormon, Colton Miller. I didn't know I was paying any. And people saying, David, Dr. Woods, spare him. I didn't know who he was. So I don't know. So he was totally safe from me.
one thing about this is it doesn't make sense what he's saying. It's illogical. Like in one statement, he says, "Well, Muslims don't follow Jesus," and then in the next moment, he says Muslims do follow Jesus. Which one is it? Do you follow Jesus as lip service, or do you really believe what Jesus says? Because basically what it sounds like he's saying is well, Muslims just follow Jesus as lip service. They're saying he's a prophet, but they don't actually believe in anything he says. He's sort of like a peanut gallery prophet, like in a baseball game, you see like the bleachers. Jesus is sort of some guy on the bleachers, and that's it. He's an NPC in a video game, like a non-playable character. He's just not important. He's kind of there. You see some picture, but he doesn't have any real importance outside of that. That's kind of what I'm hearing Janai telling us.
Yeah, and as far as like most Muslims, when we follow Moses, we follow Abraham, we follow Jesus, we follow. No, you just follow what your Dawa guy told you. But one of the things he told you is that you're the ones who are following all these other guys better than everyone else. And you have no clue what anyone ever said. All you've ever heard is what your Dawa guy told you. And then what it sounds like to me, what I hear when most Muslims are talking about this issue, and what it sounds like they're saying is, we've submitted our entire lives to these Dawa guys, and we think that is submitting to all these prophets and so on. And it's just like, they're telling you in many instances the exact opposite of what actual prophets and so on told you. And you'd never seem to get the slightest inclination to actually go to the previous books and see what prophets said. And so, in other words, how serious of a follower of these prophets are you when all you actually do is follow your Dawa guy who told you a bunch of stuff that completely contradicts them? It's like, seriously? If I were doing that, I'd want someone to tell me. So happy to tell you guys.
Right? And if you push them even further, they'll often tell you that the Bible has been corrupted, and many of the teachings that we hold to and that we attribute to Jesus aren't really from Jesus at all. Now, you might think that all of those positions are completely untenable. And again, I would actually agree with you as a Christian, but that's not the point that I'm making right now, is it? Rather, the point that I'm making is that if we're going to critique Muslims, we have to critique them based on what they actually believe. All right. And this is where I think the reasoning in moments like this just completely goes off the rails. Because when you go to the Sermon on the Mount and you say, hey, you shouldn't be doing that because Jesus said somewhere in Matthew chapter 6 not to fast and pray to be seen by others like the pagans do, and you claim to honor him, right? I can understand how to so many people that sounds like a slam dunk. That is until you realizing you're making a category mistake. You see, the Sermon on the Mount is in its primary aim, instruction for believers. It is Jesus teaching his followers what life in his kingdom looks like. Now, there is some overlap with general moral truth, right? It is still bad to commit adultery, for example, or to murder, right? Or to lust. All of those things are true. But at its core, this is Jesus giving covenantal instruction, right? This is Jesus telling his people how to practice righteousness before God, which means that this critique lands perfectly if you're actually talking to Christians, right? If David Wood was addressing a bunch of professing believers who are putting on external displays of piety to be seen, then yes, absolutely. Matthew chapter 6 is exactly the right text to go to, right? That's Jesus rebuking religious hypocrisy inside the covenant community, right? That's the whole point. That critique makes perfect sense because you're holding Christians to Christian standards. But Muslims, my friend, don't operate within a Christian framework. And according to the Christian framework that David Wood is appealing to, Muslims would be, yes, pagans, right? They are outside of Christ. They reject the gospel. They reject the Son. They reject the very authority of Jesus in the way that Jesus demands to be received. And so I just want you to think about how strange the argument becomes when you actually slow it down and think about it for just 2 seconds, right? Because it's basically like saying, hey, Jesus said don't do external displays of piety like the pagans do. So why are you, as a pagan, doing external displays of piety like pagans do?
So just to be clear, you would say that according to Jesus, what was going on in Times Square was what the pagans would do, right? So if a Muslim says, I'm following Jesus, and I'm following Jesus better than you Christians are, and you can show, actually, according to Jesus, your behavior is thoroughly pagan, you're saying we shouldn't say that because what? Because they're pagans? Like, okay, so if someone believes they're following Jesus but isn't, they're actually being condemned by Jesus, should you tell them that or not? That's what I'm confused about, because he's saying don't apply Jesus' teachings to people who claim to be following Jesus' teachings but aren't. And it's like, what? Why wouldn't you point that out to them? You say, because they're actually in the pagan category. Well, why wouldn't you tell them that? Why wouldn't you say, hey, now one, I have to point out, I disagree with sort of underlying premise here that this is just for believers. Again, we saw Jesus say the same thing to scribes and Pharisees who most certainly were not following him, who most certainly were not following Jesus, right? And he condemns them for the same sorts of things. He condemns them for hypocrisy. And in fact, I mean, that's Jesus' most brutal rebuke in the New Testament was towards religious leaders who are hypocrites and are leading others astray. So Jesus didn't just reserve this for people who are following him. He believed you could talk to someone who isn't following him and condemn their hypocrisy. So I would have to say, like he's saying, Jayni here is pointing out there are certain moral teachings that you would apply to everyone else, like don't lust and so on. But I mean, suppose someone has an entire religion that's just like, suppose a religion came along and said, you know what, our founding principle is we want to be as lustful as possible, and every moment of every day we want to lust. Could you critique them? Could you say they're wrong? I mean, Jayni here said that there are certain moral truths that you would apply to others. So he's saying you would apply that to others. Well, what if their religion says, nope, we're as lustful as possible? Can you then say, well, you shouldn't be like that according to Jesus? So I think as far as don't be a hypocrite and don't do your acts of righteousness for show, I think Jesus would say that to anybody. If your religion is built around doing things for a show to prop yourself up and show what an awesome guy you are, I don't know. I think sounds like Jesus would condemn that for anybody.
There's also another problem here. There's a kind of a fundamental problem. The issue is he's saying that Jesus is a prophet for Muslims, right? So if that's the case, then Muslims are beholden to what Jesus taught. Your argument is correct. That is a part of the axiom. It's not like you're talking to an Aztec or a Mayan, right? Mm-hmm. Or like a Buddhist. You're talking to, or let's say like a person who follows like Dharma. you're talking to a person who does believe Jesus is legitimate and does believe that Jesus' teaching is a part of the same teaching that God has always taught, because that is the teaching of Muslims. This is the problem of why you can't say the Torah, the Zabur, and the Injil are corrupted, because the point of Islamic tradition is that the teaching has always existed and will never be destroyed. It's always this consistent narrative. So if you say that the chain is broken, and you say the prophets are lost and the prophets' teachings are unimportant, then what you're saying is basically Islam is obsolete and Islam is illegitimate. This is the problem. Your critique is fair. It is a very valid critique, and it is an internal critique. His point is incorrect. He's saying, oh, you're making an external critique, not an internal critique. No, you're making an internal critique.
Not in the strict sense.
Yeah.
I said that just to show everyone that Issa does have a sense of humor about this stuff, unlike lots of other people.
Yeah, it's an internal critique, and your argument is valid. And he didn't really address it. He's like, yes, you're not following Christianity, and that's fine. That's a valid point, but that's not your argument. Your argument is, and I wish you had brought like Quranic stuff too, because that would make it even stronger. You have the Bible and the Quran that are refuting these people. The Quran refutes them too, and they're stuck in this place. It's just like when you, with the Islamic dilemma, if a Muslim says that the Torah is corrupted, they're refuting the Quran. They're going against the Quran. If they're saying, hey, you can't make prayer for show, the Quran says you can't do that, and you say, well, I will do that. Well, then I'm like, then you're in violation of the Quran. So do you want to be in violation of the Quran? This is the problem. You're stuck in these places. And I think one thing that we've learned is that there's a lot of people who say, I'm doing this religion. And you could say this even with like Christians. You might have Christians who, exploit, use, and hurt people, right? And do prayers for show and fasting for show, right? And they do these big, opulent things. And you could say, nope, the Bible tells you can't do that. You know what I mean? The same thing the same thing follows, and I think that this gentleman has there's mistakes with this point of view.
Yeah, and I think Issa, what Issa just said, as far as the internal versus external critique, I think that is probably like the main area of disagreement right now. So yeah, he's thinking that I'm standing outside, so I'm not a Muslim, I'm outside of Islam, and so is Jesus, and we're giving an external critique of Islam. We're saying, hey, here's our rules and you're not following our rules. And he's saying, well, yeah, but you're not in their group. That's not a critique of you're standing outside their group. And Issa pointed out, no, it's an internal critique. So Islam views itself as you've got the Torah, and you got the gospel, and you got the Quran. The Quran is like part 3. The Quran is like the Quran is the third installment, but it's supposed to be consistent with all the previous installments and so on. So they don't regard themselves as pagans or outside the teachings of Jesus. They're supposedly completely in line with the teachings of Jesus. And so we say, actually, you're not following Jesus. And I want to be clear here. If Muslims did not claim to follow Jesus, if Muslims didn't say that, if they said, we don't believe in Jesus, we reject Jesus, we can't stand Jesus, we only believe in Muhammad, not all these other guys, I'd still critique the hypocrisy of gorging yourself with food while claiming to be fasting and stuff like that. But most of it would be a completely different kind of critique. The main thrust here is you guys claim to be following someone who says do the exact opposite of what we see you doing. And as Issa pointed out, and as Jayni pointed out, well, they could say that's been corrupted. Okay, then we go Islamic dilemma. Actually, you're not allowed to say that. So that's kind of the point. There's no way out of this. If you're a Muslim and you've been raised as a Muslim and you think you follow Jesus, and you're doing the exact opposite of what Jesus said, there's no way out of that apart from you either leaving Islam or radically changing your behavior or something like that. Otherwise, you are being inconsistent in some way. So if you believe Jesus actually said these things and you view yourself as like the third installment, what do you mean? You believe Jesus came along and he said, hey, don't be a hypocrite, don't do things for show. But then once the third installment comes, then it's good to do things for show and good to just be doing everything to get a reputation for yourself and prop yourself up and be a hero, something like that. Do you think that's the final message? The final message was, yeah, Jesus had an outdated outdated way of doing things. Don't do it that way. Like, do you think that's the case? But then on top of that, if you say, nope, those teachings have been corrupted or something like that, well, now you're making no sense because your book says the opposite. So, yeah, suppose I'm looking at believers in a system and they are being completely inconsistent and there's no way out. Should I tell them? I say yes. I would imagine Jayni would say that you should try to show Muslims that Islam is false. But I mean, I look at this as like, here's a really good example of something you would point to as far as pointing out that you got a problem here, so that people who are trying to think more deeply about these things would actually sit back and go, I see what you're pointing out here. I need to figure out what to do about this.
Like, do you see how backwards that is? Right? We're expecting pagans to act like Christians while they are still pagans.
No, we're expecting people who claim to follow and respect Jesus to have behavior that follows and respects Jesus. And when it doesn't, we call it out so they can try to figure out why they don't follow that.
Right? And this is exactly where Paul helps us out here. Because in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 12 through 13, he asks us, really the Corinthians, this piercing question. He tells them, what have I to do with judging outsiders? Is it not those inside the church whom you are to judge? Right? Then he says, God judges those outside. And the church is to purge the evil person from among you. In other words, my friends, our responsibility is to deal with the hypocrisy and scandal inside the covenant community, which there is a lot of right now, unfortunately. The church is not commissioned to run around police unbelievers for failing to obey Christian ethics.
What's up?
I wanted to say that I don't think what he's saying is wrong, but that doesn't mean what you're doing is wrong. Yeah. They're not mutually exclusive, and I think that's the problem. Like, your argument isn't a wrong thing. There are problems that you need to solve within, your own spiritual community, within the church. But that doesn't mean that you're wrong for saying, hey, this is hypocrisy. These are not mutually exclusive perspectives.
Yeah, and when Paul's talking to the church in Corinth, he's talking, hey, these guys outside the church and stuff like this, the pagans, the polytheists, they're doing all these horrible things. Guess what? Paul did go and preach to them, and he would call out their evil. I mean, just check out the beginning of Romans. He really calls out a lot of evil behavior. But I have to say, I mean, he would rebuke someone outside the church. I mean, Elymas the sorcerer, Paul called him, son of the devil, you enemy of all righteousness, and so on. So he had some choice words. But I think the underlying issue here is Islam is in a different category. It's not in the category of Christians, but it's also not in the category of pagans or people who say, I don't care what Jesus says, right? When Paul's talking about those, outside the church, he is talking about those outside the church, but the people he's talking about are people, I don't care what Jesus says. I don't care what your God of Israel says. And we don't believe in any of that stuff. We don't believe in that. We don't believe in your God. We don't believe in Jesus. We don't believe any of this stuff. We don't believe in your scriptures. Why would we care what you have to say, right? And then so, at that point, he'd be trying to show them that it's true, that this is the true God, that Jesus did speak the truth, right? That's what you'd be trying to show. That's the main thing that you'd be trying to show, like the pagans of Corinth. Muslims believe they're following the true God, and they believe they're following Jesus, and they believe all this stuff. So do you not correct them? I'm confused here. Like, if a Muslim comes up to you and he's doing the exact opposite of what Jesus says, and he also tells you, hey, I'm following Jesus even better than you, do you respond to point out the inconsistency? I would take it as obvious that you do. And I wouldn't apply what Paul's talking about judging those outside the church and say, therefore, you don't expose the inconsistency in their system. That, I don't know, that sounds weird to me.
Well, and one other thing too is, if Muslims are able to set up tents and tell Christians that they can't believe in the Trinity and they're believing in Jesus wrong, right? then I believe that Christians have the right to the rebuttal of that. This is like the marketplace of free ideas. This is how we kind of in are the spaces that we're in allow for this type of perspective. So I think 100%, if they can set up a tent, like in San Diego, right? You can set up the tent and says, I'm going to teach you about the real Jesus, right? Then you could say, well, no, actually, I'm going to teach you about the real Jesus. And I think that's a fair rebuttal. And I think this is not a fair, what Janai is trying to tell us is that you can't do that. The only way is to allow them to set up and do the Dawa tables. But if you want to do counter Dawa, you're not allowed to do it. Because it is counter Dawa. That is what you're doing,
Yeah. I don't know. It's just weird to me. Like pointing out inconsistencies in opposing ideologies seems like an important way of showing that they have a problem and that they need to think through these things more carefully and so on, and maybe eventually lead people out of that ideology. To say we shouldn't do that because we'd be judging them for not being Christians or something like that. I don't know. Sounds weird. Take a couple of these real quick. Dr. D-Wood, please react to the Islamic Dilemma Al-Zut. It's hilarious, and you look really cool as a mariachi. Yeah, no, I did. I shared that. That's a good, funny video. Hey, Issa, I know you have experience working with children. I'm currently working in a company church in the UK. Have you got any advice for me?
Like to work with children or just like working in a church? I would say for children, make sure that you have really easy, visible types of books that you're teaching from. Because when you have things that children can connect with, that makes it really easy for them to learn. You don't want to use lots of words. You want to have nice big images and stuff like that, and you can have nice Bible stories and maybe nice Bible videos and stuff like that. I think those would be kinds of good things that you could use within your church as good material to draw children in.
Here we have, what are Jesus' Quranic teachings that we should follow? What's the Injil? Well, that's a long, going to be a long answer to that one if you want to give the Islamic response as far as what's the Injil. Because the actual answer is pretty obvious and straightforward, but it doesn't work for Islam, and therefore kind of no one knows. So it's a rough situation. But we'll continue working on that one all year. Sounds like Janai is saying that when the Bible says something is morally wrong, that only applies to Christians, not to other people. Well, he granted that there are things that apply to other people. He just didn't think that this was what I was pointing out was part of it. I saw you reposted a Bryce Crawford tweet. Please be warned, he is a false teacher connected to another false teacher, Todd White. I have the receipts to prove this on my blog. Please use discernment. Well, I was only pointing out how hilarious it was that he was talking to a Muslim and what he pointed out, and how a lot of people convert to Islam and don't know anything about Muhammad. And then when they find it out, they're surprised. So yeah, just so you know, if I quote tweet someone or something, I'm not endorsing everything the person says. It could be a total atheist. It could be a total atheist making a good point. I'm glad you're both streaming together. It's always nice to see you both. Yep. And you have main thrust here. That's what Muhammad said. Very rude, very rude. His argument seems very disingenuous. I don't think it is. I think I can kind of see where he's going. It just, I think it comes down to what Issa was saying. Like he's interpreting what I'm saying as an external critique. Issa and I are both interpreting it as an internal critique. So let's see.
That's not our mission, right? And so, no, our job is not to go to Times Square and to interrupt a Muslim prayer gathering because it doesn't align with our Christian moral values, right? That's not the mission of the church. And I think when we start acting like it is, we're not being bold, we're just being confused. Now, I could honestly
No, so he thinks we were there to give a moral critique. There for a couple reasons. So one is, and I said this when I was talking to the guys there, This is a flex, right? This is and I'm saying this just because I see this every year. They'll have a prayer in like Times Square, and then all the messages are, "You see, we're taking over America, we're taking over New York," and so on. It's like, okay, if you're actually going out there for that, if you're going out there for a show of strength and look, we're dominating and so on, okay, well, we get to respond then. I get to respond to that, right? No, you're not taking over anything. You're not. And that's just like U.S. citizen David, right? That's, in other words, that's separate from, that's not even like a Christian critique. That's not, as a Christian, I'm responding to this. That's regardless of what I was. If I was a Jew, if I was an atheist or whatever, I would not want this taking over. So, and here in the United States of America, you have a right to respond. Guess what? These guys have a right in the United States of America. They have a right to gather in Times Square and do their prayers and be shouting stuff over the loudspeaker. They have a right to do that in the United States of America. If you're doing it to flex, on people, okay, then I also have a right to respond to everything you're saying and to make fun of it. So there's that. There's the fact that these guys are flexing every year. In addition to that, it's that these guys are claiming to be the true followers of Jesus Christ. Okay. Do I point that out to them? I think it's really important to point that out to them. So anyway, he kind of seems to interpret this as, I'm just looking at Muslims going, these guys aren't behaving like Christians. Let me go and tell them that they're not behaving like Christians. No, I know they're not behaving like Christians. But they are claiming to follow Jesus Christ and contradicting everything he said. So why wouldn't I tell them that? For those, and it's always a minority, but for those who are actually going to think through this.
Brother, I have to head out now, but I really appreciated being with you tonight. I love these kinds of streams, and I hope to see you in the next one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're having this awesome discussion here, ladies and gentlemen, but Issa has to go see Bassem Youssef. And he even got there, because you see he's waiting in his car, right? He even got there like 3 days ahead of time so he could be at the front. So he'd get the best seat.
I'll see you, friends.
Yeah, catch you later.
See you, Dr. Wood. Peachy.
Started off with too much cargo. All right. Back to Janai here.
This video right there. But I actually think this exposes something deeper that I think we're missing, especially within, evangelical culture more broadly. Although I still think this kind of shows up in other Christian traditions as well. And many of you know what I'm talking about, especially since I've mentioned this before on this channel. But I'm starting to make it more of a focus, because we're not just seeing it explicitly taught anymore. Rather, we're seeing it functionally lived out in a lot of these circles, right? And that's the subtle shift towards Christian nationalism is what I'm getting at. Now, from my understanding, David Wood does not advocate for Christian nationalism. In fact,
you are correct.
believe I've actually heard him critique Christian nationalism before, right? And I actually would commend him for that. So this isn't me saying that he's out there waving the flag of Christian nationalism. That's not what I think David Wood is doing. Rather, what I am saying is that in this moment, he is functionally operating like a Christian nationalist. Because what's being assumed underneath the reaction is that America is this Christian nation where people who live here are expected to conform to Christian moral standards. And when they don't, it feels like they're doing something unconstitutional or illegitimate, or it's what's probably taken place.
No, so the idea there would be like, and he already said he's not saying this is what I'm doing or something like this, but he's saying it's like an underlying idea that the United States is supposed to be a Christian nation, and so when I see Muslims and they're not Christians, I need to go and stop them. Guys, you see me stopping Muslims from like praying in their mosque and so on. You're in a different category if you're. And I don't want to just say in Times Square, because I mean Christians gather for things in Times Square, Jews gather for things in Times Square. If this were just some, if it weren't a flex, if it wasn't and I know it's a flex. They're saying it. They're saying it when they're saying it when they're talking. They say it when they share it. Islam is taking over. Islam is taking over. Let me be clear here. Not wanting to be taken over by Islam. I mean, Christian nationalists would have the same position on that. They don't want to be taken over by Islam, but so should everyone. If you're a Christian nationalist, you obviously don't want to be taken over by Islam. If you're a Christian but not a Christian nationalist, you should not want to be taken over by Islam. If you're a Jew, you should not want to be taken over by Islam. If you are an atheist, you should not want to be taken over by Islam. If you're a Hindu, a Buddhist, whoever you are, if you're a Republican, if you're a Democrat, whoever you are, you should not want to be taken over by Islam. So this isn't, only Christian rules apply here. It's here's a system that calls for our violent subjugation and wants to take over the whole shebang. And they try to do that more and more and more. Do you not respond to it? I think you respond to it. I think you respond to that. I think we've seen the problems in Europe with not responding to it or always backing down from it. It does not go well. Islam is inherently extremely aggressive, and it only stops when someone stops it. When has Islam stopped advancing when it wasn't stopped by something else, right? When Islam kept invading Europe, what stopped it every single time? Someone else stopping it. So, yeah, I don't. Again, this is a situation where a Christian nationalist would not want to be conquered by Islam. I would say no one should want to be conquered by Islam at all, period. It's a really, really bad idea. In fact, if you're a Muslim from a minority sect of Islam, you should not want to be taken over by Islam. Why? Because they're going to go after you too. So everyone should be on the same page of this issue.
Now, to be fair, this isn't just David Wood who I think is making this mistake, right?
Hang on. We had a Ground Zero gifted 10 memberships and then gifted another 50 memberships. So that is a lot of people. That is a lot of people who just got memberships. You can all thank Ground Zero for that. Cool stuff. All right, here we go.
I'm seeing this really on a broader scale, right? There are so many Christians who feel outraged at the growing Muslim presence in America, right? Many of them feel threatened.
There's I don't want to say there's not a growing Muslim presence, but it's the United States, guys. It's growing in the, how do I put this? Islam is not growing in the United States. It's basically between 1% and 2%, and it's going to stay that way. Why? You have people who convert to Islam. The number of people who convert to Islam, that's completely offset. That's completely offset by the number of people who are leaving Islam. So, the only way Islam grows in the United States is by immigration, bringing Muslims to the United States, or having babies. The United States isn't like Europe. It's not where you just, like in Germany and France and stuff, where you had, tons of people, 1 million people just pouring out of Syria and stuff like this, and just going to European countries and stuff like that. You're not getting that massive influx there. So no, this isn't about, Islam's taking over. Unless something serious changes, Islam's not taking over the United States. Lots of other things would have to happen before Islam is taking over the United States. So my concern isn't that Islam is taking over the United States or something like that. You can kind of see the problems in Europe, and don't ever let that entire process get started, because it ultimately destroys things. So, one, not Christian nationalism. Two, not about Islam taking over. Islam has some serious internal inconsistencies that need to be exposed. Why? Because even though lots of Muslims are not going to pay the slightest bit of attention, some do. I know from experience. You blast away at Islam on this issue. Yeah, maybe 99.8% of people don't pay attention. Some do. So Do you not say it? Do you not say something because 99% of people aren't paying attention? Or do you go ahead and say it anyway for the people who are actually paying attention? And if you're flexing, we're taking over as a message to your fellow Muslims around the world, hey, we're very strong and we're taking over. So even though we may feel weak, we're actually very strong. No, one of the things that really bothers Muslims about Islam, the number one thing, again, we can thank Muhammad Hijab for doing the work and compiling the data for us. The number one thing that bothers Muslims about Islam is moral problems with Muhammad. But the number two reason was the weakness of the ummah. It bothers them that according to their religion, they're supposed to be dominating the world and they're supposed to be the most powerful force around. They're supposed to have Allah on their side taking over the world. They're looking around going, all these nations are way more powerful than us. And we're relying on handouts from all these guys. What's going on here? That bothers them. Guess what? I want that to bother them. I want it to bother them that what their religion teaches about them being so strong and they take over the world and stuff like that, it doesn't line up with reality. So when someone is in Times Square, we're so strong, look at us, we're taking over, Islam is so powerful. I want people to know, no, you're not powerful. Stop that. You're not. You're weak. You're weak. Why? Because it's not true. It's not true that the creator of the universe is on your side to take over the world. It's not true.
Right? They feel like there's a cultural shift happening, right? They feel like they're losing the country. And again, I want to say that all of those feelings are completely valid, right? I don't want to dismiss that or poo-poo on that or whatever the case may be. But I do think we have to remember something very basic. We live in a country with religious freedom. That means Muslims can live here and practice their religion here. Atheists can live here. Hindus can live here. Christians can live here. You can be a citizen of this country and not be a Christian. And I'm going to say something that might surprise some of you, especially some of you who may be listening to this and are obviously Christian. I actually think that's a good thing, right? Now, do I think that it's a good thing that people reject Christ? Of course not, right? I believe everyone should repent and believe the gospel. But I also recognize that the Bible does not present us with a world where everyone just is going to become Christian before Christ returns, right? Scripture consistently presents us with a mixed field where believers and unbelievers coexist until the final judgment, right? Jesus tells us this very plainly in the parable of the wheat and weeds in Gospel of Matthew chapter 13, right? The wheat and weeds in that parable grow together until the harvest, right? Then when the harvest comes, that's when the separation happens. It happens at the end. It doesn't happen now. It doesn't happen through state power. It doesn't happen through coercion. Rather, it happens at the final judgment by God himself, right? That is the reality that the Bible gives us. And so that means in the meantime, what is the wisest arrangement in a pluralistic society is religious freedom. And not just because it protects others, but because it protects us as Christians, right? Because all it takes is one election cycle. All it takes is one administration shift, right? And I know some Christians probably, they get comfort seeing these politicians use this Christian language and appeal to evangelicals more broadly. I know some of you feel pumped whenever you see that, right? And look, in a certain aspect, I think that is good. But I just need you to know it's good until it's not. Right? If you build a system where religious freedom is weakened for Muslims, which I know a lot of Christians, unfortunately, right now is trying to advocate for, I just want you to understand, don't be surprised when it begins to start being weakened for you. Right? And history has already shown us this reality.
Guys, so for everyone who's disagreeing with him, what he's saying now is true. It doesn't have anything to do with what we were doing in Times Square. So he's pointing out, and I've pointed this out. I've pointed this out before. So take something like the hijab. I actually understand reasons for banning burqas as far as like security concerns. You can't identify someone. If someone in a burqa committed a crime, how do you identify the person and so on? I get that. Even with that said, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of. Uh, let, let me put. If I were in charge, I would not be telling Muslim women they can't wear a burqa. I'd be in favor of like harsh penalties for men who are making women wear burqas or something like that. There would be some pretty harsh penalties, but I wouldn't be telling Muslim women that they can't wear a burqa. And it's not because I don't think it's a screwed up system. It is. It's once you say you're making it illegal, then you're saying that the government can be telling people what they're allowed to wear and so on. And I don't trust governments. I just don't trust governments with giving them a wider range of powers to tell you what to do. So anyway, with the burqa, I would at least understand it. So when a country does, I said I wouldn't do it, but when a country says we're banning the burqa or something like this, I get it, and I don't object. It's your country and so on. I see that you have reasons. So suppose it's just the hijab, right? Just the hijab. That's where you're not covering your face. So there's not a security concern. If a government were to say Muslim women can't wear the hijab, now you don't have the security issue where you can't identify someone. You would have lots of people who would say, darn right, ban that thing. Okay, what did you just tell your government? You just told your government whoever's in charge gets to decide what people are allowed to wear. And what Jayni here is pointing out is, okay, that may go the direction you want it right now. What happens when the next administration comes in and they say, actually, Christians, we don't want you wearing crosses or something like that? It's like you already agreed with the previous administration that the government gets to tell you what you're what you're allowed to wear and what you're not allowed to wear as part of your religion. So he's totally correct in what he's saying here. You need to be careful about what you want your government to do, because when you say, I want my government to do this, you have just agreed that your government has the authority to do that. And people agree with it when it's going against someone they don't like. Administrations change and so on. So he's correct here. It's just, I don't see what that's got to do with anything we were doing there in Times Square.
For example, when Constantine the Great made Christianity the favorite religion of the Roman Empire, many believers at that particular time rejoiced, and understandably so, right? They were persecuted. They were fed to the lions. A lot of wicked stuff was happening around that time. And so they recognized that in one sense, Constantine coming to power was...
Hang on here. So Salvage Control said, D. Wood, there is no reason on earth why a woman should wear a burqa. Period. Shut up. There can be a reason. What if she wants to? So you just told me to shut up. I'm not going to shut up. And tell me to shut up one more time. I'm just going to block you for thinking you. In other words, if you're telling me to shut up, but I have the actual ability to make you shut up, why wouldn't I? All right. But I'm going to give you an opportunity, Salvage Control. There can be a reason for a woman to wear a burqa. She could believe that that is what she is supposed to wear, and she might want to wear that. She might be in a situation where her husband isn't telling her, she's just a Muslim on her own, and she wants to wear a burqa. Should we say, no, you don't get to? And should the government step in, forcibly remove her burqa and send her to jail? Or they are forced, stupid. Some are forced. Salvage Control, are you... Okay, you're sounding really stupid right now. Are you saying no women actually want to wear a burqa? Because that's idiotic nonsense. There are plenty of women in this world who believe that it's good to wear a burqa. I disagree with them, but that's what they believe. And so they don't want to take off the burqa. Should the government step in and forcibly remove the burqa from them? All right, so let's see this. So we have Obelisk Universe say yes, and we have Giovanni Garcia says yes. All right. Let's get a couple more yeses in here. We have Brandon here saying yes, so they should be forcibly removed. Okay, so let me continue. If a woman wants to wear a hijab, keep in mind, that's not the full covering. That's just a scarf around her head. If a woman wants to wear a hijab, should the government step in and say you are not allowed to wear that covering on your head? Now, look, this is from earlier. Yes, security issue. I said I understand the point about security, and that's why I don't object. I don't object when a government says that they're banning the burqa. I understand that it could be a security issue. My issue is I so dislike governments having that level of control over people. I don't even like that. But that's a situation where I at least understand you have a point and an argument, and so I don't object when they ban the burqa. I keep my mouth closed. So should you forcibly remove a woman who wants to just wear the hijab? Again, the hijab is just covering the hair, face uncovered. Should you stop a woman from wearing that? You say no. Let's see. We have no. We have yes. We have no, no, no. Looks like most people on this one are saying, on the hijab issue, are saying no. And we have yes. All right. For those of you who are saying yes. So again, most people saying no to this one, but some people saying yes. Hang on. What's going on here? Yes, if a woman wants to wear a hijab, she should wear it even if the government says no. Actually, more so if the government steps in. I don't know what you mean by yes, because the question is, should the government step in? Let's see. Yes, 100% remove the burqa. It is a false claim of grievance against God for the vanity of horrors claiming to represent God. Let's see. No. And someone said, yes, it's funny. Okay, look, here we go. So Malik here says, yes, for banning hijab in public. Okay, so Malik, that's kind of the point we're making. When you're saying, here, you're not talking about a security issue. If a woman wears a headscarf, and you say, no, the government must stop her from wearing that, then you're saying the government says, no, you have to show your hair. You are not, as a woman, allowed to cover your hair. Okay, when a nun also has a covering on her head, do you stop the nun? Do you lock up the nun? Do you pull the nun's headscarf off? Do you do that? I don't know what it's called. I don't know what it's called there. We say make a poll. Okay, I'll make a poll. We're going to do a poll, guys, not in the Zoot sense. Should the, let's say, U.S. government forcibly stop women from wearing a hijab? I'll put in parentheses headscarf just because not everyone knows the terminology and some people think the hijab is the burqa is the hijab or something like that. Should the U.S. government forcibly stop women from wearing a hijab, headscarf? Based on what I saw there, it sounds like most people would say no. And so, let's see. Should the U.S. government forcibly stop women from wearing a hijab, headscarf? Okay, there we go. And that's why saying don't allow something because of a security issue is more reasonable than just saying, hey, we don't like this because, it's what you wear in your religion. Because once you say, hey, we don't like your religion, therefore you're not going to let you dress according to your religion. Okay, well, guess what? That can affect that would affect nuns. That would affect Jews wearing coverings on their head and so on. And that's wild stuff. That's the idea. If you give the government, if you agree that the government has that power to enforce what is appropriate attire for people's to wear in their religion, that doesn't stop with the people you don't like. That just doesn't stop there. In other words, don't think that just because some group you don't like is on the receiving end of the new rules, don't think that that never turns against you. This is interesting, though. So we've got the poll going, and it's should the U.S. government forcibly stop women from wearing a hijab, headscarf? 21% said yes. And this is the point that Jayni was making. This is the point I'm making. Those of you who say yes, 23% say yes, the government should forcibly stop women from wearing a hijab. You're basically saying you want a government that controls everything, even what you wear as part of your religion. Okay, I don't like that. I don't like that idea. I like being able to decide what I wear. If I want to wear a cross, I don't want a government stepping in and saying, no, you can't. We've decided that you can't wear a cross, and we decide what you are allowed to wear as part of your religion. Pretty rough stuff. Pretty rough stuff. The issue though is when you have if you get enough people deciding these kinds of things. In other words, if it wasn't 23% saying yes, if it was, let's say, 70% of people in the U.S. saying yes, the government should be stopping women from wearing hijabs or something like that, you could vote in people who would do that. You could vote in people who would change all the laws and things like that. Maybe even toss in an amendment of the Constitution or something like that. They could stop it. They could control what people wear. Guess what? That's not always going to go your way. It's not. And so the general idea, again, of Jayni and me is you want the government's powers in a lot of these areas limited. Otherwise, the government controls too much of your life. I don't like the government controlling too much of my life.
Such a blessing, but then some of them started to get a little comfortable, right? They started to think that, oh, well, maybe this is what the Bible is always pointing to. And they started to look at a lot of these eschatological passages through that lens, through the lens of their present reality. But then came Julian, who is often called Julian the Apostate, who attempted to restore paganism and push Christianity back into the margins. And you see the same, at that time, they saw in real time the same state power that once favored Christians now starting to turn against them. And so what does that tell us other than, hey, you better be careful what you advocate for? and this is the exact same pattern that shows up all throughout church history. You see, when I see Christians reacting as though America must reflect Christian norms in its public religious life, I get concerned. And I get concerned not because I don't believe Jesus is Lord. I absolutely affirm that he is. Again, I'm Christian. And I get concerned not because I don't believe every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that, again, Jesus is Lord. Philippians chapter 2 makes that very, very clear. But here's the key. I get concerned because I don't think many of us understand that we do not enact that final reality through political dominance or civic enforcement. That's my concern, because that's not our mission. Our mission is actually far simpler, and it's far more powerful, in my opinion. We proclaim Christ. We preach the gospel. We make disciples. We trust that God is the one who changes hearts. And we live in such a way that even in a pluralistic society, the church shines clearly and distinctly. That is our mission, my friends. And honestly, that is the part of the problem here now, isn't it? It seems like we have so forgotten our mission as Christians that we have become just inconsistent and irrational in our thinking. Because the same people who are upset with Muslims praying in the, Times Square are most likely the same people who are going to be rejoicing whenever they see a group of Christians conducting a prayer march in Washington, D.C. I mean, do you see the double standard? Right? I do. Right? That's why my plea to all of us is super, super simple. Wake up. Right? We have to shake ourselves out of this stupor, out of this assumption that everyone around us should function as though they're part of the new covenant community. They're not. Right? I would like them to be. Trust me, I would. I would love for this entire.
Hey, look at this. So notice this is a situation where I don't even know what this means at this point. So Billy Bach says, show some respect for the Western world, man. Don't know who you're talking to. Don't know if you're talking to Jayni or to me or to someone else. But on this issue, think about this. You could mean show some respect for the Western world and therefore don't allow people to dress according to Islam. Show some respect for the Western world. Stand up to this stuff. Or you could be saying, Western world, we don't think government should be telling women what they can wear on their head. And so show some respect for the Western world. We don't like governments getting involved in this sort of thing. We want limitations on government power. If I want to tell you why you shouldn't be dressing like a frumpy ninja or something like that, that's one thing. The government's saying that's in a different category. So, yeah. Again, not a big fan of governments telling us all what we do. There's obviously lines that where governments do need to step in, like, oh, I believe as part of my religion I have to slaughter you in the name of my God. Okay, then governments do step in and things like that. What you're eating, what you're wearing on your hair, something like that, that's just really weird to me to say governments need to be controlling that. And if if you're saying, no, the government does need to step in, again, just understand, as long as you have democracies, you're going to have changing governments and stuff. And the moment you say, I really want the government to have the authority to tell me what I can eat, what I can wear, all these things, rough stuff.
Entire world to be Christian, but my friends, the Bible does not present us with that reality, right? It has made it abundantly clear that there will always be wheat and weeds until the very end. And so that means that the church's job is not to panic about that.
Check this out. Notice, even on this one. So First Amendment, David, Islam is a death cult. The government should ban Islam entirely. Notice if you say that. Should someone be allowed to say, you know what, I really believe Muhammad's a prophet? You're saying no, they should be locked up. Someone who, let's say someone reads the Quran and concludes Muhammad's a prophet. You're saying the government should step in there and say, nope, you're not. So we're going to execute you, or we're going to lock you up or something like that, or torture you, something. You're going to make them stop. What did you just say that the government has? The government gets to tell you what you're allowed to believe as far as your religion. But Islam's really, really bad. Okay, what happens when the government decides that Christianity is really, really bad? What? You're saying governments get to decide that stuff. Well, Islam is really, really bad. Notice what you're saying. Islam is really, really bad based on these criteria. And I believe government should stop people from believing this thing. Okay. So you're saying the government should have the power and authority to step in, tell you you're not allowed to believe in this. Why, in the name of common sense, would you think that an administration 15 years down the road is going to find whatever I don't know what you believe, is going to find whatever you believe horrifyingly bad, and is going to toss you, is going to start torturing you for it? Would you, that's the point. Would you rather have a government that gets to make those decisions? And yeah, I want them to make those decisions. Why? Because I don't like that group over there. Okay, but once the government is what decides that stuff, then that's not you anymore. That's the government, which is over you and then can do that to you. Why don't? I'd rather have a government that doesn't do that. If there's a problem with belief, if there's a problem with what someone, again, if someone's a terrorist or something like that, absolutely, government steps in. If it's a matter of someone believing something that is wrong or false, I believe that comes down to me. You, government, stay out of that crap. Don't interfere, but don't interfere with me, like in the UK, right? In the UK, if you object to Islam, the government stops you. The government stops you. They don't stop the Muslim. They stop you from criticizing that. Okay, Why? They have a government that interferes on these things. And what happens? Then they elect people who are on the opposite side, and now we'll lock you up. And you guys are saying, yeah, it's good that the government locks people up for... Government, you stay out of that crap. I'll deal with that stuff. We'll deal with that stuff. The moment you say the government is what deals with this stuff for us, the government decides what people are allowed to believe and what they're not allowed to believe. That's the take. And for some reason, people are going, oh, we don't want to become like the UK. In the UK, they actually interfere. They actually interfere. And they're not interfering on the side you want them to interfere on. And you're saying, oh, we need the government to have more power to tell us what to believe. Okay, great. And gosh, stupid.
Reality is to be faithful within it. And so the next time that you see a Christian react like this, I want you to gently remind them of what our Lord and Savior actually taught us in the scriptures. I want you to remind them of the mission. Remind them of of Matthew chapter 28, right? Again, Jesus did not say, go and enforce Christian morality in the public square. That's not what he said. You're not going to find that in there. Rather, he said, go and make disciples. My friends, that's a very different assignment. And I want you to remind them of what the apostles themselves did in Acts chapter 17, right? When Paul walked through Athens, which looks like modern day America, if I'm being honest with you, and he saw a city of idols, right? He didn't panic. He didn't try to get Rome to pass legislation against pagan temples, right? He didn't do any of that. Rather, he reasoned. He proclaimed. He confronted the idolatry with the resurrection of Jesus Christ, right? With that message, he addressed false worship through his gospel proclamation. And so let me be very, very clear, because I don't want to be misunderstood and I don't want you to hear what I'm not saying. I am not saying we don't confront idolatry. I'm not saying that we don't confront sin. That's not what Paul means in 1 Corinthians chapter 5 either. Rather, what he says is that our primary responsibility is to deal with the corruption inside the church. And so
my Fairy Tale Life said, Apologetics Roadshow, basically they're saying our government should do what the government does in Islamic countries. They're dumb and don't see how stupid they sound. Yep, did not think of that parallel, right? So you got, in Muslim countries, it's, hey, Islam rules, and everyone else, you're basically a second-class citizen at best, assuming we don't just lock you up and so on. And people like saying, yeah, that's what we need here. It's just we need Christians on top. And yeah, that sounds like it would definitely work really well.
When we address the world, we do so through our gospel proclamation, not through coercion, right? We confront wickedness by preaching Christ crucified. That's it. It's not going to be done by berating Muslims while they're praying publicly. It's not going to be done through trying to enforce our religion through the machinery of the state, right? That has never been, and it never will be, the mission of the church. In fact, Paul reminded the Corinthians of this very same point in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, right? In that passage, or really in that letter, they were tempted to dress up the Christian message with, eloquence of speech and worldly wisdom, as though the gospel needed some help to be received by unbelievers. And Paul tells them,
look at this. Christian War Department says, we're just fed up. Yeah, I'm fed up too. What do you do about it? There's a pretty common thing where I'm fed up with this. Therefore, I want the government to come and deal with this for me. It's like, if you're fed up, then do something about it. If you're fed up, then you do something about it. If you get enough people who are fed up, then you have a ton of people who can deal with something for you. The moment it's, I'm fed up, therefore I demand a government that deals with this sort of thing, and we give the government the power and authority to make these kinds of decisions, you just gave the government way more control over you. Again, I don't like the government having all kinds of control over me. I don't like the government jumping in and telling me what to do.
Look, I want you to remember how y'all became saved. I want you to remember how I decided to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and him crucified. That's it. That's the strategy. That's how hearts are actually changed, right? That's how societies are transformed, right? We proclaim Christ crucified. And we trust that the Spirit to do only what the Spirit can do. And as Paul says in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, we live quiet and faithful lives. We mind our own affairs, or in the black way to say this, we mind our daggone business, right? And we work with our hands, and we embody holiness, and we don't panic every time the culture reminds us that they're not Christian, because we understand that. Now, I know that may not be the popular answer to many of you, right? It may not feel strong. It may not feel like we're doing something. It may not feel like that's the thing that's going to win the culture war, Janai. But I just want you to know that that's the biblical answer, right? And so that means the question that we should be asking ourselves is not, how dare they worship publicly in Times Square? That's not the question that we should be asking ourselves.
That's not the question we're asking. We weren't there because how dare they worship in Times Square? It's they're flexing on all of us, and they don't even realize how their flexing completely exposes how fake they are. And we're going to tell them and the world how fake they are, how absolutely fake and how incoherent their entire system is. We take that entire thing and we use it to show that there's a massive, glaring problem with their ideology. Why would we not want to do that? So far, like a lot of stuff he's saying I agree with. It just has nothing to do with anything that was going on there, anything I was doing. So,
Rather, the real question that we should be wrestling with is, how do we reach them with the gospel? How do we show our love to a dying world? That's the questions that we should be asking ourselves, right? And so we have to keep reminding ourselves to stop being shocked when pagans are acting like pagans. When pagans act like pagans, the solution is not to make them behave like Christians. The solution is to preach Christ crucified and trust God to renew their hearts.
Fun fact, Muslims, if they are convinced that they have the truth and that they have this indisputable truth from God, they're not listening to your message. I'm saying, I would say like estimated 95% of the Muslims I've ever seen come to Christ only came to Christ after their religion was exposed. That was when they were able to take an alternative message seriously. So when you're saying don't expose the problems in their religion, don't expose problems with Muhammad, don't show that their entire system is hypocritical and inconsistent, you're saying just let them continue having this complete confidence that their religion is true, and then preach Christ crucified to them. I'll give you an example. Nabil. I've mentioned this many times before, guys. Nabil, after he became a Christian, he said, because we had ongoing discussions for 4 years. Nabil told me after he became a Christian, he said, every time we investigated an issue on the evidence for the crucifixion of Jesus, his resurrection, his divine nature, the reliability of the New Testament, every time we investigated that, he said, I would think to myself, Christians actually have good evidence for what they believe. He said, but then why didn't you convert? He said, because I would also think, well, even if they show me with 99% certainty that all this is true, I'm still 100% sure that Islam is true. Wasn't until we started looking into Muhammad and the Quran that his confidence in Islam was shaken, and all of a sudden then he was able to take the gospel a little more seriously. So, yeah, guys, this just reminds me of stuff 20 years ago where Christians are saying, just don't criticize Islam, just preach Christianity. If you as a Christian want to just preach the gospel, I have no objection. When you say, don't criticize Islam, you should just preach the gospel, and you're saying that is how things should be, absolute disaster, guys. Absolute disaster. And so, yeah, if that's what he's saying, hey, don't expose the problems in Islam. You're not supposed to do that. That's a disaster, dude. That's a disaster. That is a recipe for Dawa success. What do I mean? What do I mean by Dawa success? Dawa guys lie compulsively, chronically to support their religion. If you do not go in there and expose the lies, then people just continue believing the lies. And now you've got people's heads filled with lies that keep them locked into their religion, and you don't respond to it because, no, we're just going to preach. Okay, well, I don't know what to do.
That, my friends, is the solution.
That's not the
But
solution.
all right, guys, look, I can keep going on in this video, but that's the video. Let me know what you think down in the comment section, right? Look, if you found this helpful and you want to see more conversations like this, then please go ahead and, like, share, subscribe, do all of that good stuff. It really does help out a lot. But until next time, guys, peace.
All right. Well, again, plenty of stuff there that I would agree with. Nothing he said really had anything to do with what we're doing. And the overall message, I'm not sure I was interpreting that correctly, but if the overall message was don't expose Islam, don't uncover all the problems with Islam and expose all the lies and point out all the hypocrisies and don't show how they're not actually following Jesus, don't show them any of that, just preach the gospel, that is a huge, 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 huge mistake and blunder. And if you don't believe me, just ask some ex-Muslim Christians. Anyway, take these super chats here. Revelation fits the Dawa Injil criteria. I don't know what you're saying. People like him suffer from self-destructive empathy, and they love to signal their piety. They do exactly what Christ warns against. Greetings, Netherlands, bro. God bless you all. Fight. Islamophobic or pattern recognition? Yeah, you definitely see some patterns in Islam. Do lack of funds. God bless. Can I have your attention? Yeah, I just read your comment. You could have posted something else. We got male Naomi before Grand Theft Auto 5. Shaking my head. We remember Naomi. Yeah, we remember Naomi. Actually, he's kind of in that direction, but not as far off the deep end. He assumes Muslims value religious freedom as much as we do. Yeah, that's why Islam is in a different category of things, right? That Islam ultimately wants to take over. So that is not just a celebration of, hey, we have religious freedom in the United States, so we're praying here. They're flexing. Guess what? If you use your religious freedom in the United States of America to flex, don't complain when I respond. And I'm going to respond. This is what I think Raymond Ibrahim calls doormat Christianity. This guy seems too naive. Nice guy, but naive. I would agree. Nice guy. He's missing some things. Here. Giovanni says, no, David, honestly, he's literally so lacking in knowledge that it's harmful. It's literally what got us in trouble in the past by just being passive and allowing evil to grow. Yeah, guys, notice D. Wood is not saying when I'm talking about all the governments and stuff and what you do with head coverings and stuff, I'm not saying be passive. I'm saying we do that. We do that stuff. We respond to Islam. We don't have the government all of a sudden getting the power to control what people believe. And guys, I don't know what, you don't need to. Islam is so incredibly weak and fragile. A handful of people going through the Muslim sources and exposing the stuff led to the avalanche of apostasy. What would happen if you had 10, 20, 50, 100 times as many people doing it? Islam would crumble. Islam's already crumbling. More people getting involved makes it crumble faster. What you don't want to do is, Islam's crumbling really fast. Let's elect government officials who now control what we're allowed to do and say and think and stuff like that. That's a recipe for tyranny, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm saying that because, guys, you will, I guarantee you will have a tyrant. Not a tyrant yet, but someone who is on the path to becoming a tyrant, who's going to come to you and say, here's all the things you don't like in this world. Just let me have all the power and I'll take care of those things for you. And you're going to have people who are so frustrated at the way things are in the world. They're going to go, yeah, you do it. You get all you take all the power to go and do all this for me. And then he owns you after that. Issa says, thank you for having me, Dr. Wood. Thank you, Chet. Yeah, you go have fun watching your hero, Bassem Youssef. Moment we start regulating people's clothes, it's a very dangerous precedent. Yeah, it's pretty simple. It's not about burqa alone. It puts precedents in the Constitution to argue to ban a lot of freedom of expression. That's basically it. Yes, 100% remove the burqa. It is a false claim of grievance against God for the vanity of liars claiming to represent God. I think I already read that, but that was... should the government ban halal meat? No, I don't think so. You don't want halal meat, don't buy it. My opinion about, and if you wanted to say, should the government never like impose halal meat? Like you have places you could like have it like serving in schools and stuff. That's a different category. But should you not be allowed to have this meat or something like that? Even that's like, okay, now the government gets to tell us what we're allowed to eat. And I don't know, guys. I just don't trust governments with that. And neither did the founding fathers of this country. The overarching theory of government here in the U.S., the entire system is designed to prevent a tyranny. That's why you have the system of checks and balances with the different branches and stuff like that. That's why you have the right to bear arms. It was all meant to protect you from a tyranny being imposed on you. And what's weird is like people are like, hey, you know, all those powers, the founding fathers were like, you shouldn't let the government have these powers over you because they will use it against you eventually. People are like, yeah, we need the government to have all those powers and to do all that stuff. My opinion about false claims of grievance against God is more important than all other concerns. Giovanni says, I think we're saying yes from a Christian government perspective, David. At least I am. What Christian government? You mean a Christian government of a Christian nation? That's different from what we're talking about here. Like what country are you even talking about? Be sure, my brother David, I am not asking you to pass a law, but to communicate the nature of genuine respect for God's craftsmanship. You can wear a G-string. It will be fine. God made us. I still am not sure what you're saying. For anyone saying yes, this slippery slope can easily be turned on us. The internet could be banned as a security risk, or new laws like California's forcing people to sign into apps for security. This is the point. That is the point. Look at the direction certain states are heading in and certain countries are heading in. Do you want the governments and the police force to have more powers, to have more control over you? I don't. I'm looking at the UK locking people up for what they post on Facebook, and I'm saying your government has too much power. If they are telling you we just lock you up over something you say on Facebook, your government has too much power over you. You need to rein in your government and say you don't get to tell us what we're allowed to say on Facebook. Shut up. Stay out of it. Anyway, burqa should be banned anywhere. You can't wear a mask. Certain protest banks when it's being used to hide crimes, etc. Oh, by the way, I agreed on all that stuff. I would take that as obvious. Like if it's government saying you can never wear a burqa or something like that, it's like, okay, I'm not crazy about the government having that kind of authority over people. But yeah, in like certain places where security, totally agree, where it's a security issue. And the idea behind the ban is it's like it's always a security issue. And so, okay. Way behind, but fighting against Islamic supremacy is not Islamophobic. Yeah, I know. The YouTuber who made this vid is a great Dimmy. I just say he's kind of new to the situation, and give him time. Again, we don't want that precedent in the Constitution. Banning clothes can be banning freedom of expression. Precedent goes a long way for future laws. Soon as the woke left votes in a Muslim, then the tides will be turned. That's just the general idea. There are There are certain issues you want to deal with yourself. And then for things that you can't possibly deal with, then, governments may need to deal with certain things. But you don't want them to have more power than they need. Thanks for interesting content. That's what I do. Okay, but he's kind of got the Mahdi beanie. So, Brother D. Wood, I see making disciples more than Christians. I want to be more like that. Oh, I see David making disciples more than most Christians. I want to be more like that. We definitely need lots of disciples and disciple makers. If a religion consistently causes violence and that's the sole criteria for banning it, should we ban practicing it? That way it couldn't be abused. No. Look at what you're saying. If a religion consistently causes violence, so you say, okay, government, if a religion consistently causes violence, you say, okay, well, it's a tiny fraction. It's a tiny fraction of Muslims who actually go out and kill people, but it is consistent. Therefore, government needs to ban anyone from believing in it, not just the jihadis, anyone who's going to believe in it. Okay, well, what about the next administration when they say, look, other religions have caused violence? Well, it hasn't been as consistent, but we still see people becoming violent. Therefore, it's just all banned. Everything's banned. It's just that's the point, guys. It doesn't work like that. You don't give the government all this authority to start telling people what you're not allowed to believe and think that's always going to go in your favor. It's not. Trust me, it's not. It won't. It won't go in your favor 100% of the time. The world doesn't work like that. And again, look at different states and the different directions they're going in. You want to just say to all these states, you guys now have the power to deal with all this stuff, bad stuff. Muslim public prayer is an attempt to subvert God's children for the vanity of the Islamic whatever. There is no such thing as. You don't have to forcefully remove the burqa or jail, just restrict entry to high security areas where it would be. Again, I don't have any problem with that. That should be standard, I think. Talking about just not being allowed to, there are certain places where you can't wear it, period. Did this guy even watch the video? Yeah, he did, and he's just wrong on some things and misunderstood some things. You did the right thing, David. This guy is just naive about the well of knowledge you have to Islam. That's what I mean, and it's pretty common. Guys, again, you go back 15 years, what he was saying, standard. That was standard. It's changed. You know what changed it? You know what changed? Because, again, you go back 15 years. It was standard in churches to say, don't ever criticize Muhammad. Don't ever criticize the Quran. Don't criticize. Even more than that, don't ever mock. Don't ever make fun of this stuff. Don't ever do that. But also a good idea, don't criticize Muhammad or the Quran. Just preach the gospel to them. That's all you do. You know why people's view changed? Because people looked at where Muslims were converting, leaving Islam, converting to Christianity, and it wasn't coming from the people preaching that. It wasn't. It was people who are preaching the gospel and wrecking Islam. That's where you started seeing people leaving Islam. And the world paid attention to that and went, okay. So it was the success of wrecking Islam while preaching the gospel. Guess what? That's the approach. If someone believes false things, you expose them as false things. You also share the truth with them. I have no idea why that would even be controversial, but it was. Correct, David. Islam claims all other God's children are unworthy to be abused. They make claims of grievance, saying God's work is poor to be preyed upon. That's a huge problem with Islam. I don't like this brand of peaceful pacifist Christianity. It comes off as weak and insignificant. David is literally preaching the gospel by showing them of their hypocrisy and what Jesus actually teaches. Yeah, that's confusing to me too. It's like Jesus didn't just say, hi, I came to die for your sins and I'm going to rise from the dead. He said those things, but that's not all he said. He also said, this is how you're supposed to live. And then you got Muslims who think they believe in him. Well, guess what? Even if you were talking to someone who didn't believe in him, if you're saying, hey, here's the Christian covenant, you should at least want people to understand what the covenant is, don't you? Like what covenant living is like. Okay, why wouldn't you say, hey, guess what? That's not covenant living. Matter of fact, if that was the entire message, right? Hey, here's what you guys do as part of your religion. Here's what Jesus said. Which do you think is actually from God? What Jesus said or what you're doing? Islam is profanely cheap. It claims only that God's work is poor. Video, David, stay in your lane. Chat, block every lane. Funny. This guy's issue isn't that he's wrong about Christian nationalism. It's that he's ignorant on Islam and what happens when it isn't stopped. Yeah, if you interpret someone saying we are not going to be controlled by that as Christian nationalism, no, again, a Christian nationalist would say the exact same thing, but again, that's what every person should say. Why? Because Islam is coming for everybody. Islam's coming for Christian nationalists. It's coming for Christians who aren't Christian nationalists. It's coming for Jews. It's coming for atheists. It's coming for Hindus. It's coming for everyone. We're all on the same side of that issue. Elitism is ingrained in Islam. You can't expect an elitist person to listen to nice words. Elitists will not listen without their narcissism disproven. Yeah, that's the thing. When you're sitting there, hey, look, that's what they're doing in Times Square. See, this is the best. This is the best for everything. You don't want to point out, actually, this is a bunch of hypocritical nonsense. Of course you do. When has the government done anything right? That's my view. Like, as far as things you don't want to give more power to. I don't know, the most incompetent system in the world, these governments tend to screw up a lot of things. What he is criticizing about David Wood is not exposing anything. It's just describing how things are. Yeah. I send super chats as a means of checking whenever I have any money in the bank. Bingo. So far, so good. That's funny. Some think halal food is cruelty to animals due to the way it kills them. Can it be banned that way? You can ban cruelty to animals, and that could go for anyone. They do have some basically nicer, I don't want to say more humane. They have some nicer ways of doing halal food and stuff. So what you'd want to say is, do it the more humane way and so on. But, saying, hey, you can't say your prayer over the meat it's rough idea for me to think that governments should be doing that. David, I made a funny AI video especially for you, and I really hope you like it. Please do a live reaction. Islamic Dilemma Al-Zut. I just finished another song. Al-Zut Milk Lol. I love you, man. Not in the Al-Zut sense. I'll wait till AP's here. Maybe we'll react to some of that. No, but no, I shared the video. I shared the Islamic Dilemma Al-Zut video. That was classic and funny. Vespers tomorrow, y'all. Go to church. These questions on how to deal with Islam gave rise to the Spanish Inquisition. You need to be very careful with that kind of power. Al-Zut rhymes with but, not. Because it's not Al-Zut, it's Al-Zut. So it'd rhyme with but. But we allow poetic license to modify the pronunciations to get them to rhyme. Apologetics and Civics Roadshow. Nice. David, we are not saying to force people to believe or not. Just make it harder for them to start with covering the face. No public worshiping. Worship in church or at home. They are using our open minds to take over. Even that, saying you can't worship in public. Like what? So you get locked up? Keep in mind, David. Keep in mind, everyone. I'm not saying don't oppose this stuff and don't. I'm saying don't think that the government is going to do that for you and is going to do a good job and isn't going to use that to eventually oppress you. You do it. I still can't figure this out. But no, we have to have the government do it. You don't. All you have to do is step up and expose this nonsense, and the avalanche is going to accelerate. Governments suck at what they do. All you need to crush Islam, I've been saying it. You could go back to my old videos from many, many years ago, from my earliest videos. I'm saying Islam's ultimate nightmare is an informed population of free people. An informed population of free people. That's it. That's Islam's worst nightmare. That just wrecks Islam. Informed population of free people. You could be an informed population of unfree people. That's why you don't want the government having control over this stuff, because then you could be completely informed, but the government, now it controls you and you're not free. Stop relying on the government to do the work that we should be doing. This is for us to do. We have the ability to wreck this false demonic nonsense. Jesus was so soft on people praying in public places. Did Naomi ever respond to your stream? I don't know. Wonder what Janai thinks of Jesus flipping tables. It's hard to imagine any woman choosing to wear a burqa, David. It looks uncomfortable to me. And who would want to walk around in that all day? There are women who believe they're supposed to wear it. Don't tell me there aren't. There are. There are women who believe that they should not allow men to, anyone other than their husbands or close family members, to see them. What do? Do you say strip that off? Again, I understand if it's a security issue and stuff like that, that's one thing. If it's just a woman who says, I believe my hair is supposed to be covered, and you say, no, you are not allowed to do that. Dangerous ground, dangerous ground. Don't trust governments like that. Momo split the moon for the men of Al-Zut. That is true. Just realized I've been watching you for almost 10 years. You'd think I'd be an apologetic bulldozer by now. Well, maybe you are. All right, everyone. Just wanted to go through that video. Actually took longer than I thought it would. I thought it'd be like an hour and 20 minutes or something like that. But you guys had to go and start running your mouths about, no, we need the government to come in and dictate everything about what we believe and what we do in life. It's the only way to stop Islam. The moment people catch on and start exposing Islam, it's already crumbling. It's going to crumble way, 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 way faster. All right, guys, thanks everyone for watching. I got to go now. I actually have a meeting that started 15 minutes ago. I did record a video earlier. I just haven't edited it. Haven't edited the video, but video should be up tomorrow. It's about Governor Josh Stein. Governor Josh Stein, governor of North Carolina. Oddly enough, it was at the very end of Ramadan where a couple people sent me his Ramadan proclamation. This guy actually said he commends Ramadan to all people in the entire state. I was like, that is some sick, messed up stuff. Anyway, I made a video responding. I wish I had seen it during Ramadan, would have been more relevant, but just recorded a video about that. Better late than never. That should be up tomorrow. I think I'll edit it tonight and post it. All right, and last one here. People seem to forget that separation of church and state is so that the state doesn't interfere with religion, right or wrong. That's the fundamental idea, that the government doesn't tell you about those things. Doesn't tell you what to believe on those things. Yep, absolutely correct. All right, everyone. Video up tomorrow. I think AP's getting back tonight. He was out in Utah. But we should be live tomorrow night, and I should have a video up. I'll probably finish it tonight, but I'll set it to go live at like noon or something tomorrow. So should be up. It's about a 10-minute video. And pointing out why really, really stupid, insane, stupid idea for a governor of a state to be telling people that it's a good idea to be celebrating Ramadan. Again, notice, same pattern. I don't want these dudes telling me what to do. All right, everyone. Catch y'all later. Thanks for watching.